Have I been lying to you? Hello my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney and today we are doing the Contradictions Book Tag. So hey, what's up? How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. We have some red wine going down right now, preparing me for this book tag. I've been waiting to do this for months. Mel Reed's tagged me to do it, and here we are. We're doing it. This tag was created by Daniela, and I will leave all of these links down in the description, as well as the like list of questions if you also want to do it. But today I'm doing it, and here we are. This is basically a tag that is going to call me out. It's going to expose me on all of my inconsistencies, things that don't add up in my reading tastes. Have I been lying to you? Let's find out and go into question number one. Question number one is, I love this genre, but I hated this book. I think that one of my favorite genres in books is magical realism. Basically, magical realism sums up to normal life, almost like a contemporary-ish type setting, but it has like fantastical elements and like a sprinkle of magic. And also in my eyes, this could also be portrayed as like surrealistic elements as well. So I love that genre so much. However, I do have two answers for this question. The first answer is kind of like my real one, I guess I could say. A disclaimer is, I guess, that this book was shelved under this genre on Goodreads. And I don't know why all of a sudden I'm questioning myself. It's probably because I hate conflict. But this book was shelved under magical realism as well as other things. But magical realism was a genre that it was shelved under. And that book is The Bear the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This book I ended up giving 2 stars. And this book has a lot of like Russian folklore that it really does come into like physical, tangible play within the story with our main character. And I will say that was the absolute only thing that I liked about this book. I think that the way that it brought in the Russian folklore and it like sprinkled it throughout the story and made itself known within the storyline was super cool. I loved learning about the folklore. I loved seeing it represented in the story. But the rest of the story, I legitimately could not care less about. I'm so sorry, but I was just so bored. I remember listening to the book, falling asleep, and then waking up with like 20 pages left. And in my head, I was like, should I rewind it and re-listen to the pages I just missed? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I literally don't care. It couldn't hold my attention, and if this book wasn't for a secret reading vlog that I did, I probably would have DNF'd it. And the other book that I didn't really enjoy that had magical realism within the book was Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And let me defend this one a little bit, because this book has multiple stories. I think it's like 5 or something within this short little novel. And we're following like 5 different characters, and they all kind of tie in together in one way or another, but each story is literally the same exact formula. So by the 3rd story, I was like, wait, this is the whole book? Is this really all that I'm getting? And during the first 2 stories of this novel, I really loved. I loved it so much. How there's this old cafe and patrons can go in and sit at this one particular seat in order to travel back in time and visit a different part of their life. There are stipulations and rules as to who you can go back in time and meet, among other things, but you have to return to present day before your coffee gets cold. Otherwise, something bad will happen, etc., you know. And now, all of those rules and stipulations that go into being able to actually travel back in time, they are explained with detail. And within the first story, I was like, okay, this is obviously vital information. The second story, I was like, okay, let's just revisit, make sure we all remember. By the 3rd time, I was like, got it, okay. By the 4th and 5th time, I was just like, I was like over it. So my little tidbit on this is that I love the premise and what it was trying to do, but I think that it could have been structured differently, or at least told in a different way. Question number 2 is, I rarely read this genre, but I love this book. I think my first answer is definitely sci-fi. I do not read a whole bunch of sci-fi, but this book has me in a chokehold, for sure. It is Sleeping Giants by Sylvia Novelle. This book is phenomenal, and if you are looking for a fantastic audiobook as well, this is what you should pick up. With this full casted audiobook, I have never experienced voice actors who will actually like yell when the words in the book are actually in like all caps and the characters in the book are yelling. So you can really tell through the narration that like tensions are really high, and they did such a phenomenal job at portraying that. But also they were working with such a masterpiece, a beautiful piece of art which is Sleeping Giants. It's told in like an interview format, so there's some unknown man asking these questions of our main characters, and it's all very like CIA, undercover, like black site type things going on. And it's super intriguing, and I remember thinking when I read this book that, wow, I really need to read more sci-fi. The other book that I will count for this question is Saga Volume 1, to be precise, by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This book is a masterpiece. I feel like with graphic novels and myself, I don't really get invested in the story too much because it goes by so quickly. But this one, it follows like multiple point of views, which I was nervous about because I didn't know how I was going to be able to keep up with the different point of views reading it in a graphic novel format. But there was literally zero confusion. The times that they jumped back and forth from POVs, as well as just the story itself, was just phenomenal. It was absolutely beautiful and just a lovely, high stakes, brutal story. The third question is, I love this trope, but not this book. I had a little bit of trouble finding an answer for this one, but I'm going with like witch. I'm going with like a witchy vibe book because I love witches. I love books about witches. I literally centered my arm tattoo around witches, but I did not like this book. And that book is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. And I will not say that I hate this book because I don't. I can see merits in it. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't like it. For me, the witchy stories that I really, really love and vibe with are the ones where it's just a little bit gritty, mixing with some dark magic, and the story has a lot of like atmospheric qualities to it. And with this book, it really felt like almost like the PG version of a witch story. It felt a little bit too clean, a little bit too like bright. And to me, it just had no grit, no like dark atmospheric thing going on at all. So the vibes weren't there. And I honestly felt like the side characters were way more interesting than our main character. But I will say I did enjoy how our main character's powers changed with the season. So every single season she had like a new strength, and she herself would physically, like emotionally, mentally change within the season as well. So that I thought was pretty cool. But other than that, the storyline I just didn't really care about. Question number 4 is, I hate this trope, but I loved this book. This one was super easy. This was the first question that I knew the answer to right away. And the trope that I hate is a princess, a good girl, who is attracted and in love with the bad boy. And especially if the bad boy is in like black leather or like combat boots or, you know, in some nefarious activities. I just roll my eyes every single time I see it, and I was so nervous about it being in this book because I loved the first one so much. And the book that I'm talking about is Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is book 2 in the Illuminae files. Illuminae book 1 will go down as one of my favorite books of all time. And so I was very excited to pick up the second one, obviously. But as soon as I started reading it, I got so upset and I got so nervous because I didn't want to stop reading it, but it had like my literal top least favorite trope ever, which is the princess and the bad boy. And it's not like it was a side thing either. Those are our two main characters. But I did keep reading and I got over it a little bit because, you know, she's not like other girls, whatever, but I ended up really, really liking it. Ultimately, I got over hating the trope that this whole book is kind of centered around and just leaned into like the action and the reading experience of the story. It's told in mixed media, so it keeps you on your toes and it is just so intriguing the entire time. I love this series. Question number 5 is, I love this author, but not this book. This one was also super easy for me. And I haven't revisited this story in so long because I hate it. And that book is Solitaire by Alice Oseman. So in this story, we have our two main characters, Tori and Michael, and they are in high school, I believe. And there's some like group of people who call themselves Solitaire, who are basically just like wreaking havoc and playing pranks amongst the entire high school. And it gets like personal and sinister and starts taking some turns. And finding out who is Solitaire and what is going on within that was the absolute only thing that made me finish this book, because just the fundamentals of what was going on within these pages were just like emotionally hurting me. The way that mental health was handled in this story for Tori as well as her brother Charlie, it was absolute trash. Like, I don't know if that was the point of the story, was to create two parents who literally could give a shit about either of their kids' mental health and not really take any interest in anything, even when it's like blaringly obvious that our main character is hurting and needing help from someone, whether it be a therapist or even just someone to talk to, the parents will literally just leave the room. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, bye. And it just drove me up a freaking wall. That was the biggest problem I had about this book. And I know that there are other things that I did not enjoy, but that's the biggest one. And it's been so long since I revisited this story, so I would have to page through and find the other things that I hate about it. But I think that's enough because we need to move on. The other book that I hated by an author that I love is Shades of Magic Volume 1 by V.E. Schwab. This is The Steel Prince. It is a graphic novel in which we follow King Maresh before he's actually king in the Darker Shade of Magic series. And honestly, I just have no frickin' clue what happened in this book. It was so hard to follow. I didn't know who was who, what was going on, and the art style just wasn't my favorite. And I understand that that's like a personal preference, but that's something that, like, if it's a graphic novel and that's how I'm taking in my information, I like to be aesthetically pleased in some way. And I just didn't love. I didn't love the artwork. And that's really all I got. I have nothing to say about it because I don't even understand what happened or what was going on. Okay, so question number 6, I actually didn't do, so this is me realizing that I didn't do it. So I'm just gonna slide this in here really quick. Question number 6 was, I do not like this author, but I like this book. There hasn't really been a time where I have given an author a second shot yet, meaning if I have read one of their books and didn't like it, I have not read another one of their books to see if I like a different story by them. That is something I plan on doing in the future, but I have not done it yet, so I don't necessarily have an answer to this question. Question number 7 is, I love this cover, but not this book. The first book I want to talk about for this, I can't even like hold up and show you because I sold it. And that is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This cover is stunning. It's absolutely beautiful, but I DNF'd this. I DNF'd it pretty hard. It was a buddy read for my Patreon book club at one point too, and I couldn't get through it. And my reasoning for it is pretty simple and it won't take much time. I don't have anything like fundamentally wrong to say about it, but it's just the fact that whenever I tried to get into this story, I kept thinking about the Poppy War. I kept comparing this book to the Poppy War and then getting really upset that it wasn't the Poppy War. So this storyline couldn't hold my attention because every single thing that happened, I was just comparing it to the Poppy War, which to me is just superior in every single way ever. So I sold it to someone who really wanted the the Illumicrate version that I had, and I hope that they are loving it way more than I did. The last question on this tag is, I hate this cover, but I love this book. This one I also knew right away, and it is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I hate this cover. I think it's terrible. But the book itself is so phenomenal. This is a dystopian that rivals Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. Those two comparisons together are exactly what this story is. It is high stakes, it is exciting, it is brutal, and it's just so good that even Caleb has read through every single book available in this series within like a month. It is the best version of a dystopian underdog story that I have had the pleasure of reading. So if any of that intrigues you, I guarantee that it is a good book to try. And then the last question is for me to tag people. So if you haven't done it and you want to do it, I'm tagging you. But in particular, I will tag Jan, Erin, and Deja, as well as Meg. All of their links are linked down in the description, so please do check them out. And while you're down there, if you are still watching, leave the tea or coffee emoji. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I always appreciate your support. Can't wait to see you in the next one. And of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.